Welcome back to the vKTLW Quaestor Officer Training. In the previous module, you were introduced to the 5 key areas of financial management, to the importance of time management, and to the effective use of a financial committee. In this module, we will build on that knowledge and discuss the concept of budgeting in greater detail. We will also introduce the resources available to you to aid in building your budget. Let's begin with a brief overview.
The budget provides a foundation for your chapter's financial plan. The 2 basic components of a budget are assets and liabilities. Assets in your chapter are most commonly dues and rent owed to the chapter. Any monies collected by the chapter should be considered assets as it pertains to budgeting. Liabilities refer to monies that are spent on behalf of the chapter. Common liabilities are dues paid to Sigma Chi headquarters, risk management foundation fees, and rent utility bills if your chapter owns a house. By identifying all of your chapter's assets and liabilities and comparing them through the use of a budget, you will be able to identify if the chapter has enough planned income to cover its planned expenses throughout the year. This will give you a framework for your cash flow planning during your term of office, which we will expand upon in a later module. Once completed, the budget should be proposed to the financial committee and the chapter for approval. Before we look at a sample budget, let's go over a few considerations. Budget items are going to vary from year to year. As an example, your income is going to vary based on the size of your chapter and the changes in your chapter's membership that occurs throughout the year. A few of those changes are new members entering the chapter, members graduating or leaving the chapter, and certain brothers fulfilling their 2 international dues payments, which are due for the first 2 semesters following their initiation. Your expenses will vary as well, as they are based on the chapter operations for the current year. For these reasons, using the previous year's budget will not be sufficient. It is best to use both historical data and projected amounts for both your income and expenses to create an accurate budget. Although some budget items will change, there are items you can use historical data for. An example would be utility payments if your chapter has a house. You can use previous utility bills to make estimates of what utility costs will be in the current year. For the purpose of this example, keep in mind that a utility, such as an electric bill, may fluctuate throughout the year. Be mindful of those fluctuations, whether for a utility per our example, or any other budget item that may have fluctuations in income or cost. For items that require projected amounts, such as member dues, you may want to consult with other officers or chairmen to make those predictions. With respect to our example of member dues, an example would be consulting with the recruitment chairman to help estimate how many potential new members the chapter seeks to add for each term. To further help with these estimates, it is common practice when building a budget to budget your assets or income a little low and your liabilities or expenses a little high. The goal of this practice is to reduce the probability of overstating your income and understating your expenses. It would be better to collect a little more income and pay out a little less in expenses than to collect less than what you budgeted for and spend more than what you anticipated. It is also advantageous to work with officers and chairmen to help estimate their budget needs. Our example of consulting the recruitment chairman helps iterate this point. Another example includes consulting the Derby Days chairman to estimate the cost of Derby Days based on their program plan. Perhaps they are looking to rent a different facility this year with a different cost, or they anticipate including additional activities. Another example would be consulting with the custos to see if they have plans for additional expenses from the previous year. Perhaps he has plans to replace some of the regalia, or is looking to rent a different facility for initiation. These are just a few examples of how collaborating with other officers and chairmen can aid in the building of an accurate budget. You must also be prepared to trim the budget once it is created. Once you have recorded your estimates and entered them into your budget, you may find that your projected expenses outweigh your projected income. Should this happen, you need to be prepared to reevaluate your estimates for each budget item and either find areas to increase your income or, more commonly, find areas where you can reduce expenses. Once you have created a budget that produces a positive cash flow, you should obtain approval from the financial committee and the chapter before utilizing the budget for operational decisions. And here's a quick thought on debit and credit cards, as they have become increasingly common in chapter financial practices. One of the fastest ways for spending to get out of control is through the use of debit and credit cards for point-of-sale transactions. As Quaestor, you will be responsible for the purchases made with a debit or credit card, no matter who is utilizing it. It has become common practice in some chapters for the Quaestor to allow other members to take a debit or credit card tied to the chapter account to use for purchases. You will want to make sure that all debit or credit card purchases have been cleared with you prior to their execution, and that receipts for those purchases are delivered to you, and that you only reimburse the approved expenses. While Team Quaestor does not advocate the use of debit and credit cards, particularly for anyone other than the Quaestor, we understand that it is a common and accepted practice in many chapters. We recommend that you be stringent with your policies in regard to their use. Now let's take a look at a sample budget. This budget example is from the Budget Builder template available to you through Sigma Chi. It can be located in your Quaestor SharePoint files. It can also be located here in Canvas. In this module, we will give a brief overview. There will be more detailed instruction on how to use the Budget Builder to create your chapter budget in the next module. First, let's take a look at the chapter information at the top of the budget. You should include your chapter name and university to signify who the budget is for. It's also important to include your name in the heading to identify who created the budget. Equally important is including the budget year and the approval date to identify the period the budget was created for and when it was approved for use. Next, we will look at the income budget details. As you look down the income account list, you will notice common income items for a Sigma Chi chapter. Items such as dues, insurance, and philanthropy and fundraising will be common in all chapters. There's also items such as rent, utilities, and professional fees that may be relevant to some chapters and not to others. As each chapter is unique, you can use the account items that are relevant to your chapter and leave the items that are not with a zero balance. The expense budget will be similar. As you look at the account items under the expense budget details, you will notice accounts such as dues, officer expenses, and programming expenses that will be common to all chapters. You will also notice items such as housing maintenance, rent, and utilities that would only be relevant to chapters with a chapter house. As with the income accounts, you can enter amounts into the expense budget that are relevant to your chapter and leave items that are not with a zero balance. Once all the income items and expense items have been identified and their estimates entered into the budget, you would then compare the total estimated income to the total estimated expenses. In this example, a calculation is automatically made to show whether your estimates cause you to be over budget or under budget. You should have more income than expenses. If so, you would be under budget. Should you have more expenses than income, you would be over budget. In that case, you would have to reevaluate your income, your expenses, or both to get you under budget. This workbook also contains a mock income statement and a check register. We will discuss those along with how to use the Budget Builder template in the next module. As mentioned in our financial management overview, your budget serves as your financial plan for the year. It is imperative that you use estimates that keep you under budget and that you strive to adhere to those estimates or make the proper adjustments when necessary to stay under budget throughout your term of office.
This concludes the introduction to budgeting. In our next module, we will review the Budget Builder Excel template available to you through Sigma Chi, as well as including your budget in your financial software. If you wish to access the Budget Builder template prior to the session to become familiar with its functionality, download it from your Quaestor SharePoint files or from this Canvas KTLW Learning Management System. Remember to take part in the online discussion related to this officer training module with your facilitator and the members of your Quaestor group.